There are more than 2,400 public schools and 100 charter schools across North Carolina. With about 147,000 students, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools is ranked as the second largest school system in the state. CMS says it provides all students the best education available anywhere. That's a quote from the school's own vision statement. But how can CMS be the best at education when about 2/3 of its students are reading at or below grade level? Carolina Impact's Jeff Saunier takes a look at the critical issue of reading.
Hi, Amy. Hey, you recognize this? It's a copy of Charlotte's Web, one of the most popular children's books of all time. Chances are you read this as a child, or maybe read this to your child, or maybe both. Well, we're going to use Charlotte's Web to help illustrate Charlotte's problem. Why so many Charlotte school kids who ought to be able to read this book on their own can barely read at all.
Wilbur was now the center of attraction on the farm.
Good food and regular hours were showing results. Wilbur was a pig any man would be proud of.
If I told you my story.
Listen up, parents. This is what third grade reading is supposed to sound like.
Ever since the spider had befriended him, he had done his best to live up to his reputation. When
Charlotte's Web is a book that's written on a third grade level, and if a child is not able to read Charlotte's Web independently,
And if I told you my story.
and understand the story and what's happening, something's wrong. And
Monroe Richardson is executive director of the advocacy group known as Read Charlotte. He says what's wrong is that only 39% of third graders in Charlotte-Mecklenburg can actually read at a third grade level.
When Charlotte's Web said some pig, Wilbur had tried to look like some pig.
When Charlotte's Web said terrific, Wilbur had tried to look terrific.
If they're not reading at third grade level, then what level are they reading at?
So I hear from teachers about children showing up in their third grade class reading on a kindergarten level. I talked to a third grade teacher yesterday that described that situation.
If I told you my story.
And when your kids are years behind in reading,
Wilbur was now the center of attraction on the farm.
well, it's like handing third grade books like Charlotte's Web to these first graders. You know they're going to struggle. Again, just listen.
Charlotte had written the world R.A. dance, and Wilbur really looked fainted. When Charlotte's Web said traffic, Wilbur had tried to look traffic, and now that the web
60% of our children are not reading at grade level.
Mecklenburg's low reading scores were highlighted in this year's State of the County address.
What we know is that children who are not reading proficiently by the third grade are less likely to succeed academically, less likely to graduate from high school, less likely to be ready to succeed in college and in their careers.
'Cause it's time to play. It's time to learn.
And the County Commission chairman says part of Charlotte's school reading problem is the lack of affordable preschool program.
Oh, let's get ready with...
Like this Read Charlotte program that teaches kids vocabulary words before they ever get to kindergarten.
Whenever I see a child that isn't reading or can't read, I think about what didn't happen for them in school, but I also think about what didn't happen for them before they even started school.
Good job. All right.
Once the kids do start school, here's another problem. Schools like Reed Park Elementary, where the neighborhood is mostly poor, or Sterling Elementary, where many of the kids are homeless, or Albemarle Road Elementary, where they speak 30 other languages besides English. They're all examples of schools with similar poor reading scores, but for different reasons.
There's no program that's better than having a high-quality teacher in the classroom that knows how to teach.
CMS's Chief Academic Officer, Brian Schultz, says getting better reading scores at all schools may mean getting better reading teachers at all schools.
Teacher quality, the putting a teacher in a classroom that can move a student 3 years worth of levels in reading, as opposed to a teacher that doesn't know what to do with reading.
And Wilbur really looked
Radiant. He did everything possible to make himself glow. It is not easy to look radiant, but Wilbur
And then there are the reading scores themselves. We looked at 12 years of third grade reading scores, all the way back to 2003. Charlotte's average rate of reading proficiency, less than 36% of CMS third graders actually reading at third grade level.
We need to be held accountable. The school system needs to be held accountable for not educating our children.
County Commissioner Vilma Leak is a former CMS teacher and a former school board member who's blunt about why CMS isn't succeeding with reading.
When I was there, 11 years, we had 44 programs, and no one could ever tell us what program worked for the children.
Well, I think Commissioner Leak is right that we need to know whether programs are working.
He would turn his head slightly and blink his long eyelashes. Then he would breathe deeply.
There really are no excuses. I mean, if we want to look at who's at fault, we just need to look in the mirror.
Spring into the air and do a backflip with a half twist. At this, the crowd would yell and cheer. How's that for a pig?
This is my story.
Read Charlotte says their goal is to more than double reading proficiency among third graders over the next 9 years, from 39% now to 80% by the year 2025. By the way, 2025 also the year that all those current third graders, the thousands who are so far behind in reading right now, well, that's the year they're supposed to graduate from high school. Amy?
Thanks so much, Jeff. Joining me now is Judy Kidd, president of the Classroom Teachers Association of North Carolina. And Judy, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it out here at the beautiful park.
Oh, it's great to be out in the park, especially on a beautiful day like this.
Let's talk a little bit about those reading levels. What are some of the challenges that you see that are keeping students from actually being able to read on that third grade reading level?
Basically, when students enter kindergarten in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, they are subjected to so much testing that it's decreasing the amount of instructional time that teachers have to deliver instruction and teach these kids how to read and the basics in reading, and it's decreasing that to the tune of something like 25%. Teachers are having to test one-on-one on a very frequent basis.
You're 25% less time that way, plus we have multiple languages being used in our school districts, and children aren't always even placed in the right level to get started.
Well, that's true at some schools, because when we have students that are entering Mecklenburg County from outside of not only Mecklenburg County but the country, they're being placed based upon their chronological age as opposed to what their reading level may or may not be. Some students have never even attended school in their native countries, and yet they're being placed in a classroom based upon chronological age here in our country.
What can we do to improve that?
We can stop looking at chronological age and place a child where the child is performing, because it's frustrating not only for the student who doesn't know English in the first place, but it's also frustrating for a teacher who may or may not know the native language that they have come in with.
Judy, we're going to chat with you in a little bit. We appreciate your time, but more questions for you in just a moment.
Good.
There's a lot of uncertainty around the